76 teams. We're down to 3 as we approach the lower finals. My whole chef with me, McCornmeal, and the energy's hitting a little bit different, not just for the tournament, but I can promise you the energy's hitting very much so different here in the caster booth. We've got the lower finals, as you mentioned, those St. Edwards going up against Arizona State Maroon. The big storyline here, not only did these two teams play each other earlier, it was an incredible 5-map set to start off the day, but St. Edwards, new school to the CCL coming into this year, has shown a lot of promise. But how about Arizona State? Let's not rule out the changes that they've made to their roster over the last couple of years, being kind of a fringe playoff team. Now it looks like they've been pretty indomitable for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that best-of-5 series that goes to a Game 5 in the S&D, and fortunately for the side of Arizona State, you pull that out and you're able to face off against Ottawa later on down the road inside of the winners finals. Unfortunately, you lose that, now you find yourself here in another best-of-5, but this is a $700 best-of-5 series. Loser goes home, winner goes to the grand finals to at least try to take down Ottawa in 2 best-of-5 series. But I mean, Alan, you look at this Arizona State roster, the first name that comes to mind immediately is going to be Fishity, as he has been hot-handed throughout not only the entirety of the tournament, but really for the last couple of years throughout his CCL career.
Yeah, 100% the case. I'm not going to lie to you. He's a guy that has been kind of floating on my radar a little bit, but this tournament has definitely forced him into the conversation. But he's not the only one. The rest of his team has also been playing pretty darn well. We'll talk more about that, but maybe we'll have a chance and look over what the map set will comprise of for this lower finals. Like you mentioned, we're still in the best-of-5 series, as the entirety of this double elimination bracket has been so far. The thing is, you look over what these maps are going to entail, and I actually really like the first 4 maps. We're going to be getting a Gavudu to start things off, with Tuscan as our first Search and Destroy. Been really enjoying what I've seen from Gavudu so far. Haven't had a chance to cast over it as of yet. But then Bocage, I would say just about as even as it could possibly get when it comes down to a balanced map set right now for Hardpoint in particular. So these first 3 I'm really excited about. Berlin would be there for the 4th and the 5th if we need it, though, Alex.
Yeah, and really at the same time, too, you talk about that first 3 map set, and of course, when we talk about Gavudu specifically, it's one of those maps where I kind of compared it yesterday to how a raid would play out, maybe not in terms of the layout of the map, but how you have to go back and forth across the map to each individual point. So getting those rotations, getting out early, and getting those full 60s is going to be more crucial than ever before. And this game plays a lot, I guess, similarly to Modern Warfare in the hardpoint aspect of things, is the games are very, very close all the way down to the end, but you still feel like there's going to be that dominant team throughout the entirety of the game.
Well, the other thing, and I'm glad that you had brought up kind of the, reprisal of what we had in Modern Warfare, because you think about maps like Ramaza, St. Petrograd, that was a hardpoint rotation that took you from one side of the map to the other, back over to the other. We'll have to throw one in the middle here. Then you got to go over to the other side again. And we get a little bit of that. But, I think the most fun thing that I've seen so far on maps like Bocage and Tuscan Hardpoint, where you've got a pretty central composition of hardpoints. Everything kind of funnels in towards the middle, so you have a handful of hardpoints that are kind of dead neutral as far as where they position themselves vertically on the map, but even the ones that kind of lean one side or the other have spawns that are pretty darn proximal if you're the breaking team. Now, the maps that aren't built like that, you get the opposite, where it's going to value rotation. So I think it's kind of cool so far with this map set, where you kind of see hardpoint played, depending on the map, in 2 almost different ways, where, if you find yourself going from one side of the map to the other, rotations are everything. But if you find yourself kind of more concentrated in the middle of the map, hey, it's about being able to play trades efficiently, and those engagements just go sky high.
Yeah, I think that has kind of been more of a trend over the last few years of Call of Duty specifically as well. I mean, hell, you can go back to Black Ops 4, and on some of those hills, you would see where the offensive team that was trying to get into the hill from a team that had those spawns almost was favored in some of those engagements, and that has kind of, again, become a trend over the last few years, to where now you really are almost starting to play the map and say, hey, if we want to get these last 20 seconds of scrap time, we absolutely can. I'll give up the first 5 to 10 seconds on the next hardpoint just to be able to break it through the front door. Then you go ahead and set yourselves up with those spawns, you get those power positions, you're set up and good to go, and getting yourself, not only just 20 seconds on the last hill, but stringing together yet another maybe 40 to 50 points. So Hardpoint, I really like the way it plays inside of this game. It's fast-paced. There's tons of engagements to go around, and let's just talk about the kills in their own right. I've already seen 50s and 60 bombs dropped in competitive play throughout the year, and I think that's only going to kind of go further on throughout the year, and even to the CDL, where we could see records being broken all year long.
And get it given, okay, it's early. There's still a lot of learning that has to happen, but I've only seen one of two outcomes when it comes to hard points so far. They're either 250 to 230 pluses, or it's 250 to 100 point clubs. Like, there's not a lot of middle ground at the moment. And hey, kind of getting us back in the perspective of what we have for this match right here, you could say that about both of these teams. When they played against one another, it was 250s to 190s plus, which is, one hard point in between the two of them, which is really, really tight. But you go back to what St. Edward's had done to start off their upper bracket against Georgia Southern, and the Eagles got smoked. I mean, they were almost put into the 100-point club in all three of the hard points that they played. On the opposite front, Arizona State playing up against Grand Canyon, they also had a pretty grueling time against the Lopes there. So it'll be really interesting, I think, just to see how these two teams square off. Again, predetermined map set means that not the veto process. They can pick and choose what they think their strongest map is versus vetoing out their weakest. So I'm pumped for this one, man. I'm really amped up. I think it's gonna be a really solid respawn matchup between these two teams.
I mean, hell, if we see the exact same best-of-5 series that we saw earlier on in the day, we're in for at least 5 games of great S&D, or great S&D, but great Call of Duty action. And hell, I mean, at the same time, Alan, you can sit here and kind of ponder over the fact of, okay, SEU Blue, they come off of a nice hot win there in their last round matchup. ASU Maroon's coming off a loss against Ottawa, and how is that going to play into the momentum factor? And you can ponder and speculate all you want on that. But again, getting this far into this tournament, we've already seen SEU play in multiple tournaments here at the tail end of the Cold War season, leading up into now this CCL event here for the Vanguard Launch Open. And of course, ASU Maroon, we see them come back now, and we know kind of the composure and I guess the self-talking that they can do to themselves to get themselves in the right mode to get ready for another series. So I don't really think that the win and or the loss is going to play too much of a factor into this. These teams have already played each other once, and that's going to be more than enough to make sure each of these teams is on their A game.
And, here's the thing, when we were watching over the farewell Cold War tournaments, the Syllabus Day tournament that we kind of had, and now here in the Open, St. Edward's has really stolen the spotlight away from some of our perennial favorites. Now, it's hard to say that because it doesn't look like anyone's going to beat this Braves esports team because they can't have their second team play them this year, which is going to be a really interesting change overall to the dynamic of the top side of what we get in the College COD League. But, the thing is, at the start of the year, St. Edward's was looking really strong, had a lot of favor kind of riding into this tournament in particular, and granted they still hold it, but where in the heck did Arizona State come from? Because it isn't just Fishity like we mentioned, it's this entire roster that has been absolutely performing near the top tier of what we normally see in the CCL, and they've been doing it consistently throughout this entirety of their bracket run. They've been great. I'm really excited to see this Devs team.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun to watch both of these teams necessarily play throughout the entirety of it, but kind of going back to the point you made about SEU Blue, they look good back at the tail end of the Cold War season. And although you can't put all that much weight into a brand new game at the very beginning, there's going to be time for teams to develop themselves throughout the year. But you can see, I don't want to say considerable drop-off because that's not what it is, but you can see that there's, I guess, a bit of a jump that they're going to have to make here inside of Vanguard opposed to what they had at the tail end of Cold War in order for themselves to get back to that very dominant team that we were seeing that could take a map or two off of Ottawa Esports. So now that we look at the Braves who have already found themselves inside of our grand finals, and now that you have SEU Blue once again going up against this ASU Maroon roster, I could sit here all day and speculate and ponder about what we're going to see in this game. But at the same time, we're not going to know until the first map on Gavutu and who's going to be able to come out on top in that hard point. And, well, if every game was within 50 points beforehand, I'd expect the exact same thing here in this best of 5.
Well, perfect segue there, McCormiel, because we are ready to go for map number 1. Gavutu on our screens. SEU Blue on Austin, Texas. St. Edward's, they will be in the blue. Arizona State in their very respective maroon and gold. Zaffatini was able to find the first, and with that, the opening trades actually allows an opportunity for Arizona State to kind of just bunker up. St. Edward's taking the more passive approach. Has it cost them here in the first couple of moments?
Oh, no, we're close right now for the side of SEU Blue. They're going to have to push back, but I mean, you see Spratt go ahead and pop 2. Fishity gets 1, and this is what ASU Maroon are so good at. They're good at being able to control the hard points early, get out to a nice hot start with their Slayers being able to get those crucial kills to open up the map for their team, and then they're able to get the last couple of seconds of time, and hell, even if you don't get the last 20 seconds here, you've already got 24 to go, and you got the rotations ready for yourself. So ASU Maroon, they do a great job here starting off the game, and with 10 seconds left, you're going to be thinking about rotations.
Keep your eye on Thresh, though. He is going to be the captain of the boat, or is he? Okay, Sprat. heck. Impressive gunfight win, and a lot of conversation will start to ensue about MP40 and this, that, and the other thing, but that is a huge gunfight on rotation for the Sun Devils as they were kicked kind of out of their initial home there around the gun turret. Now they make their way over towards boat, but the problem is the next string of kills, thanks to the automaton, is actually going to go straight the way of SEU Blue. Fishity, able to respond to 2, needs to find a call on to the 3rd player, though. It's Eons up top, has a little bit of a beat down in mind, but help was there. Relk able to come through, and now all of a sudden it's the toppers who find themselves numbers on the second hill.
Well, Eons now has a glide bomb to work with, so you can work that probably over towards P3, which is a more wide open hill, but Fishity made a great play there for the side of ASU Maroon. Gets SEU Blue out of the bottom towards the boat side, and just plays a little bit more passive. It doesn't have to directly rush in towards the boat just yet, knowing that the side of SEU Blue doesn't really have to get any map pressure, but yeah, that's gonna happen throughout the entirety of this game. The TTK is so fast, but those are just beautiful shots. ASU Maroon, they get the scrap time, and now the rotation over to P3 looks to be one, at least for the momentary side of SEU Blue.
Yeah, we may need to make amendments to Newton's laws of gravity and end a 4th one there, saying if gravity doesn't shoot straight, he will be turned on, and that was exactly what has just unfolded. But we go over towards the beachside tanks. Gravity, the first one in, trying to just hold on for dear life as he doesn't have any teammates with him immediately onto the point, but good help from Fishity Beyond actually keeps any contestants off, and this is, I think, one of the reasons that people said this map is going to be really interesting to see on hardpoint, because Fishity's nowhere near the hardpoint, and he's making sure nobody from St. Edwards can even come close to touching. So with that, it would be Gravity finally getting taken down by Glide Bomb, but there's the help from Arizona State. They still contest, 25 seconds left, and St. Edwards finally gets some time.
You got full streaks if you're Fishity. And I thought that glide bomb that was coming in from Eons was going to at least try to go over towards the boat to maybe take Fishity off the spree, but continues to be on an 8 spree, and you made that point perfectly clear. Holding down the middle of the map, making sure nobody from SEU Blue can get over towards that hill, and well, now you look over towards the right side portion, or rather the left side portion of the map, and shift. ASU, they've already rotated once again, and Fishity from behind is going to get the knife. Almost is able to get 10 in a row there. 15-4 for Fishity to start off this map, and that's a beautiful way to segue after a win.
Dude, what in the heck did Fishity have for dinner? 15-4, fully streaked out, just playing off the knife. Effettini, nice little snapper, dealt with by stun grenade, because that's a thing that happens in this game. And St. Edwards will turn that into a 4-for-1 exchange, leaving Gravity by himself. And he's done well enough to actually make sure the spawns still stay locked, which is a surprise, I think, to Eons, who never really noticed that that was indeed still unfolding with the Maroon Devils right behind, able to work themselves in, hold the spawns, and get right onto the time here by this back tower.
Fantastic start for Arizona State as you cross the triple-digit mark. Contest going to be in towards. Effettini will be able to pick up the first one, but it is going to be the trades from SEU. Will allow a little bit of time in towards the point, but again, you're just playing for about 10 seconds of scrap. It is the side of SEU Blue, though, who've done a great job at pushing the side of ASU Maroon back on that left portion of the map, keeping them close to that 50% mark on the map, where they're going to be able to get a ton of time here without any contention from ASU Maroon coming, or even having to worry about anybody from the side of ASU pushing up the map.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I always look for early on in a title. Who has the idea about how far you can push the envelope to zone off a hard point, especially one like this that finds itself tucked in the back of the map? So with that being the case, and a lot of resistance being found, strafing run will come out right across the hard point. It's actually a really nice little tracking record for that plane to come across, but it doesn't find any eliminations. Allows a chance for Gravity to sneak around the back. He's number 7, but gets dealt with, and St. Edwards will hold. This Doc's hardpoint has been the best we've seen between either of these two teams so far, but of course, naturally, we talk about it, get a little bit of caster curse. In the same breath, it's Arizona State who's able to turn it neutral for at least a portion of this back 20 seconds.
And although it was kind of the best that we've seen from SEU Blue, that's really the first time that they've been able to get out and rotate towards another hard point after ASU Maroon had either broken them or been able to just hold the scrap times, because we saw from the P3 to 4 rotation, ASU Maroon was out early, and the same thing from P1 to P2. Although SEU Blue were there early, it was Fishity who made the great play to play a bit more passive and getting towards that boat to allow ASU Maroon just to get the contest time. They kind of split the hill 50-50 there. So now with SEU Blue being able to go ahead, find themselves that P5, we're on our second set of rotations here now with ASU Maroon in full control of the hard point. And again, this is their bread and butter, being able to play up close. But here comes the break. Thresh and Neons go big, funding too.
And the big thing here as we start to approach the midway point in this game with still a bombing run available for Fish, the question will be, at what point do you want to commit to that? I've seen some great effect be found with it when you kind of challenge every last bit of scrap time and then call out that bombing run to see if you can maybe find a couple of kills on rotation before your teammates have to actually hoof it over to the next hard point. So what I'm getting at is this might be a time coming up here, but the thing is, with that last hit over towards the top turret being relatively unsuccessful, Arizona State will then just default to coming off spawn and rotating early over to boat. We find ourselves in a 40-point game, though, and St. Edward's not exactly out of this hard point at the moment.
On the break, you got to be careful. The players who are playing the far angles over towards the right, Kruk's going to be able to escape now 5 in a row. Pushing in towards the hard point, the stun grenade is going to hit for the time. And Alan, one of the things that I've found kind of interesting about this game is how much damage that the stun grenades do effectively compared to other games. It's like 18 to 20 HP per stun that hits, and that can be an incredible game changer from where we were a couple of years, or really for almost all the Call of Duties, where it was just 1 HP when the stun would actually hit you.
Right, and it's, I know a lot of the conversation has been surrounding the trophy systems not being in this game, and, that was the same case for World War II back when the title was the active competitive one, and a lot of the complaints were the game was just so nade spammy. But the difference in this game is the game is nade spammy, but the stuns do 18% of your health. So, there's obviously some adjustments that we would hope to see in the near future, because it does make breaking very easy. But at the same rate, there is still a strategy and counterplay that comes in, and the easy way of calling it is just don't throw all of your utility forehead. Speaking of throwing out utility, though, bombing run will come through this time for Arizona State as St. Edwards do find themselves hunkered down on towards the invasion beach. It is just one player left, it's Thresh. But again, one of the things that I noticed a lot about St. Edwards is they do this a lot. They get into positions that allows them a chance to kind of be sneaky and just zone the hard point from space that you just don't expect them to be.
Well, Fishity will kill himself and a teammate with the bombing run before he's actually able to find anybody from the side of SEU Blue. 20-point lead now. It started to collapse on the side of ASU Maroon. They've done a great job throughout the entirety of the game to maintain that lead, but again, Fishity will kill another 2 teammates with Gravity and Effectini falling, and that's the debate that you have to have between yourself and your teammates. Do you use that bombing run and risk taking out a couple of teammates, maybe to get a couple of cheeky kills on the opposition, or do you just save it, keep it in the back pocket, and again, kind of do what Alan was talking about earlier, just kind of hope and pray that it's going to be able to find somebody on the back end of a 20-second hill.
Yeah, the only thing that you can really do is just say, all right, the 3 of you hit scrap time. I'm going to go rogue to new and just pop my bombing run. So, we got some pressure on the rotation, but it's a mystery. Everyone's been having problems with it. And with those problems, it actually turns into a St. Edwards lead for the first time since really the beginning of the game. 185-171, the current tally. We rotate to the backside here. And, well, this is a really nice little look for St. Edwards to hold on. But the thing about it is, they're not finding any kill eliminations. So Kruk, last player left, needs to go absolutely massive. Finds the first, cannot track down a second, and just as Thresh tries to cut in, it will be met with resistance from the Sun Devils. It's Arizona State all over the break.
And I mean, up until that point where the side of ASU had gotten towards that P4 hill, the thing was, Alan, SEU had done something we hadn't seen them do all game. They were getting out early on rotations and holding down the hills for 40 to 50 seconds apiece, even getting a 60, I believe, on P3 as well. So that was not only a big step in the right direction, but even getting this game to a point where it was within just a couple of points, and then even taking the lead after that fact has been big. But now SEU Blue, the hill that in the first set of rotations they were able to get a good 40 chunks of time. Even with the way that they weren't able to get on those early rotations, ASU Maroon's now going to have to play the aggressor, really get in towards this hill, and the bombing run is going to come again this time, though, from the side of SEU Blue, not taking out a teammate.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like that as well. SEU Blue using that before the hard point opens up. It comes its first pass right down Main Street. It unfortunately takes down Kruk, but then look at these last runs. They're all around the back. Relic looking up, just making sure, please don't kill me. And it will be Sprack, the one to fall this time on the final pass. 220, 200. Not enough points, or time rather, on this hard point for St. Edwards to win the map here, but they would be absolutely darn close. And it doesn't look like any Sun Devil member is going to come close to even touching this hard point. So everything for ASU falls on this next hold of the first hard point.
St. Edwards would be elated to be able to take a map 1 victory. If you remember earlier, folks, Arizona State, they were able to take down SEU in a best-of-5 in game number 5 in a search and destroy, where it was a 6-4 victory. However, ASU Maroon on the flak gun, now with 55 seconds left on the hill. SEU only need 8 seconds. ASU Maroon can win it off of this hill if they're able to maintain.
And that team kill from Thresh actually allows number 5 Efficiency to get into a crossing position to kind of play, the street guard here. Nobody passes without him being able to at least pay a toll first, but the first 3 kills come through for St. Edwards, and there's the full 4-man feed. Whoa, color me surprised there, McCormill, because that is not at all what I would have expected considering the positions the Sun Devils found themselves in. but unfortunately not able to utilize those positions to any avail, and it will be St. Edwards who get the break and capitalize map number 1 with a 250 to 218 score.
Map number 1 right there had so many different talking points that we can kind of bring up in the next time we go to the hard points, because you had at the very beginning of the game what I've talked about so much is Arizona State loved to get shifty on the map. They were getting out, they were getting aggressive, they were finding themselves those open opportunities across the map and really finding themselves a solidary home in towards that next hard point. However, around that halfway point, St. Edwards kind of got a boost in their back pocket. They put the backpacks on, they started trudging through the mud getting towards those points, and all of a sudden their hard work was paying off. The elbow grease was paying off in spades, and then they found themselves with a tie game and eventually the lead. Arizona State, unfortunately, was just too little too late. Even on the comeback when they had about a 60-70 point lead at one point in this game, where St. Edwards were just able to go ahead, find that 4 down at the very end of the game, and able to capitalize when they only needed 8 seconds.
And I'll say this much. For Arizona State, how did they build their lead? If we were to go back and recap how that map was going for the first, let's say 3/4 of it, the large majority of that map was Arizona State trading 40-20s with, I'll say 45-15s. They were the victors through a lot of the hard points, but just barely so. But when you look at how St. Edwards were able to make a comeback, you go over towards docks, you even go over towards that final hill on the beachfront, and St. Edwards didn't even flinch. They barely even got resistance met whatsoever because they were zoning the hard points so darn well. And the amount of near full 60s that the Hilltoppers found were so much greater than that of Arizona State. And in the end, if you can find a way to better utilize streaks, like glide bombs are very successful for the Toppers, that gives you an opportunity to get a little bit of an easier break attempt. So those 45-15s that were happening at the beginning of the game, once you've got streaks, those start to turn into 30-30s or 40-20s the other way. And that seemed to be a lot of the case, mostly off the fact that those big 60-second full-time hills for St. Edwards led to streaks almost every single time.
Well, the Achilles heel for St. Edwards has been their search and destroy throughout the entirety of the day, but that's not to say that they haven't been competitive in S&D specifically. We go back to the previous series against Arizona State, where they only lost the Demiansk S&D when it was a 6-5 loss, where Arizona State was narrowly able to beat them out. And then, of course, we go to a Bokage, map number 5, where it was a 6-4 win for Arizona State.
Big.
So relatively close games, but you kind of see the mirror effect, at least early on here in this series, as the hard point that was in map number 1 was map number 4 in the previous series, which was a Gavutu hard point, and SEU was able to win that. So trending in the same direction, technically, yes, but in the search and destroy, that's almost must win for St. Edwards here. You'd have to think if they can't capitalize on those next 2 hard points after the fact and really take home those respawns, this is going to be a series that goes to Arizona State undoubtedly.
It's undoubtedly maybe a little bit of a stretch for me to kind of get on board with you there, McCormiel, but I like where you're going with this because we've seen it a couple of different times. That's fair. A couple of different times, including this matchup. You just don't want to be in a position where you have to reverse sweep. It's just so difficult to do with how scrappy this game is currently playing. Now, again, mitigating the madness is going to be what everyone's going to have to learn, and I would say tilt your cap over to what Atlanta FaZe are probably doing right now because they're always the best at trying to get through the chaos and find some sort of structure, which always leads them off to a hot start, at least in the last 2 years. So that's what we're looking for when it comes to respawn. The thing is, and why I go back to what you were saying with this search and destroy, is search and destroy is search and destroy. Sure, the game may feel a little bit different, and at the same point, obviously weapon metas and health bars and things like that change and vary, and even map formations to kind of throw that hat in the rink. But search and destroy is search and destroy. If you were bad at Express last year, you better figure it out real quick here as you get into Vanguard, because a map like Tuscan, I won't say it's the same as Express, but there are, how you formulate what your post plants are going to look like versus your retakes versus your initial executes. All of that is still the same structure in some form when it comes to communicatively how you're going to be able to approach search as a total game mode.
And this is going to kind of like pivot a little bit from the direct conversation about these two teams specifically, but I mean, you talk about Tuscan as a map for search and destroy, and I could easily see a change coming to the map to be where, okay, you say you take that A site, and instead of having it in towards the middle portion of the map, you flip it to the other side in that outer portion, and then it instantaneously becomes a much better bomb plant for each side because you get there about on the same timing, but offense does get there a bit faster, so maybe you put that on the outside, get it a little bit closer to the defensive side to where you can actually spot up, maybe find a couple of kills beforehand, and you're looking at a very, very fluid map. Now, that's not to say that Tuscan S&D doesn't play bad as it is right now. It's just little things that could make them even better going forward, and that's one of those little adjustments that I would absolutely love to see on a map like Tuscan, and the same could be said about a lot of the other S&D maps. It could just be something as simple as bomb placements being a little bit, maybe moved around just a bit, or maybe just having a line of sight blocked off by a piece of cover.
I like that portion right there. Add a little bit more cover into the mix because, I think it was Seymour and Cruz who were talking about it earlier today about, with the Gammon Bombs not being a part of the game anymore because of GAs, would we start to see frag lineups? And we were starting to see a handful of frag lineups. I would love to see that be a more integral part of the game, like way back when COD was in Pro Mod. That was a huge part of the off-the-rip strategy. Who's throwing nades? How many are we throwing? And where exactly are we going to concentrate them? That's a really cool portion of the game that we've missed for years. And I would love to see that come back in the mix because right now, like you mentioned, due to how the bomb sites are, well, I won't say A is open, but due to the fact the offense gets there faster, you almost feel obligated as a defender to throw a lot there just to see what's over there in the first place, maybe even sneak away a kill. So I think that mentality is a really cool shift that we have not seen a lot of in Call of Duty over the last couple of years. And I think maps like this could definitely provide it, pending, of course, maybe a couple of those assumed exchanges that you were looking you were mentioning. So we get into it. Our colors look to be correct, but our team logos at the top seem to be a bit backwards. So it will be ASU on the offense, but they have lost first blood. It was Affectini getting maybe a touch too over aggressive past the A site.
One thing I love to see already. We talked about it so much yesterday simply due to the fact that we had an absence of it and we were starved of it throughout the entirety of the Cold War season with smokes and snipers making the appearances of the search and destroy just spice things up that much more. And now Fishity left in a 1 versus 4. And now I've seen him clutch these, but being able to do it here in the first round of the S&D is going to be a bit difficult to pull off. However, Fishity with this pistol yesterday was an absolute menace, and the sniper in hand, you never want to count him out. So it's entirely possible here in a 1 versus 3. You got 35 seconds left to play with still.
And he's put himself in a really good spot. Oh, good information. This is one-way information. Or is it? The claws are coming out, backing down. Stun will be left to remain of that at least somewhat engagement. And all of a sudden, time has become his biggest opponent. The shutter's open and information was gained, but St. Edwards say, no, we're good. You can just keep staying on this side of the map. We know the bomb is down, so thanks for the free round. Fishity going to likely just hold on to his life if he possibly can. He's good for potential streaks, so why not keep the 1-kill streak for now?
You can see a couple players chase over towards the B site. They're not going to opt to push into the building, though. And that's just a good round from the side of St. Edwards. Or rather from the side of Arizona State. I mean, you push around a little bit, you get up close and personal in a couple of regards there, and really it just comes down to getting those first picks and just the sniper not really being able to pull anything off there from Fishity until he's in a 1 versus 4 scenario. So, I mean, that's kind of like the cost versus reward, the risk versus reward benefit of having a sniper. It's the fact that if you can get there and get that first pick with a sniper, that's fantastic. That's what you want to see. But if you leave yourself in a 1 versus 4 with the sniper, good luck.
And that's the other kind of puzzling thing. We mentioned offense typically gets over to the A site first. Why then do you push Affectini to get through that long lane that you expect Fishity is going to be watching over? So, I don't know, questions that we can consider next time Arizona State's on the offense. Eon's able to meet Fishity at long range and win the initial first blood battle. So 35 seconds on the clock for a defuse plus a retake needed for the Sun Devils, and they are just not finding any room to work with. You've got Relk all the way back at his spawn. He's just being annoying, which Sprack will be able to at least tally up 1 elimination, but still 2v3, 20 seconds to make it happen. Gravity, information, but gets pushed back, and Eons is on the hunt, so is the rest of the Hilltoppers, and they will take the first 2 rounds.
And I love the aggression there. It all comes down to the offense, again, being able to get to that site first, but you really don't see any pressure from the side of ASU over towards the A side on the defensive side because they're almost scared to lose those lives, but they have to send bodies over towards B to make sure you can't get the bomb over towards that site as well, but they're also trying to play for the flanks, and that's one of the best ways you can retake on the defensive side is getting around on the flank, but also being able to make and set up that pinch, and when you have nobody to make that pinch play and you're just trying to push through middle, it allows the side of the offense to really get set up in a post-plan situation that favors them so much. But now we'll see the bomb rotate here through middle map. It's going to be Kruk who's trying to look around the corner. A first gunfight and engagement should be going down here in just a few seconds.
1 bullet ricochet is enough for him to back down and call for a bit of assistance, of which Thresh is quick to answer the call. First blood once again. That's 3 straight rounds of St. Edwards capitalizing on the first engagements. Thresh still watching up the top of the map here in the middle. And he's going to have a really good angle at the bomb. Just wants to check it. Cooks up a nade. Perfect medium rare. Nobody there, though. Relk, same thing through the doorway. Eon's looking for Thresh's trade. Not going to be able to grab it, though. So Sprack on the double. We've seen better stuns in our time, but that'll be okay. Still holds on to the bomb and gets the information on the Kruk. But still, Relk, persistent, turns it into a 1v1.
That's a great kill by Relk, too, because although he doesn't necessarily know it right now, the bomb was left down directly in middle map, so that potentially could have been somewhere you sit up and towards the top of the church or maybe in the rubble to be able to at least try to check that bomb. But one of the things we talked about, the S&D bomb glitch at least was fixed in recent patch, but unfortunately there's still the sound cues of the players planting, so you can honestly play around a couple of these bomb sites, wait for the player to start getting aggressive with that bomb, and maybe you're going to be able to win the round with a little bit of intel that comes through at least the sensory of the ears. But across the map, it's just going to be Relk who's playing by himself. 45 seconds is going to be the restrictive timer to get the defuse and or the kill with the defuse, and Fishity's just going to opt to rotate back. This actually might work out perfect.
Oh, but Relk, has he maybe heard something here? He is in the same spot. First couple of shots will tag, but doesn't get the kill. Quick, the red dot chase. Fishity. Oh, you dirty dog! Who's chasing who is the question. Wow, unbelievable stuff there from Fishity. Nice little disciplined play here. And, maybe Relk gets a little bit over-aggressive. The chase persists a little bit longer than I'm sure he would have liked, and he does get punished for it, getting Arizona State on the board.
And those are the situations you're so comfortable leaving Fishity in as well, knowing that he has the potential with a sniper, with a regular gun, to be able to be put in those 1v odd situations and come away with a win in those. But let's just talk about sitting in the perfect corner and then being able to have the open aim directly where you know that player's going to slide out from. Yeah. That's just pretty.
Well, this round, opening engagement has not surmounted into a first blood as of yet. Gravity, lots of information over towards A, but the defense has a great look at this. This is a really strong position for number 4 in Gravity. Fishity watching over the top of him with a scope. He's going to feel really confident just to sit right here and, well, reaps the rewards of that position. Nice, beautiful shots on a Kruk who came through U-Haul, and all of a sudden St. Edwards are quite literally hoping for a miracle, and one may have peeked its head. Thresh finds an opening onto the sniper mid-map, leaving Gravity kind of isolated here.
The thing is if you're on the offensive side, sure, you get to A first, but you have to be able to make a play with it, and once you lose a life, it's going to be hard. Thresh, the last one alive, though. 1 versus 3 quickly turns into a 1 versus 2. Actually might get the best timing on the second player, and will onto Effectini. Now in a 1 versus 1, it's going to be Thresh versus Sprack. Can the Lata M Phenom get it done here in a 1v3?
Oh, well, look at the position from Sprack up top in the shutters. He sees him. Patience.
Oh, that scared me.
I don't know if there would have been enough time to fully rotate that back to B, but it definitely would have given a chance for some shots to come back, but a little bit of toe tagging through the bottom of the shutters is just good enough for Sprack to find 3 kills that round, by the way, and secure back-to-back instances in the search here for the Sun Devils in... Uh-oh. Was that our last observer? Oh, no. That was our last observer. Crashes out. I saw it happen the first time. I didn't want to say anything, Alex. But you can't fool me. An old dog can learn some new tricks, but we still can't find a way to trick our way through scan repairs, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate, but, we see a 2-2 game, so at least we know that there's going to be a fair amount of competition and that we're following at least some sort of similar storyline to what we saw beforehand. But as we work the technical issues in the background, we're going to kick things to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the update for you on map number 2, and we'll potentially be setting up map number 3.
Well, we're still dealing with a couple of hiccups here on the developmental side of Search and Destroy. So we lost both of our observers, but we can report Arizona State wins that 6-4 on the Tuscan Search and Destroy. It was a tight one. And, here's the thing, and we talked about this at the top of this matchup in particular. St. Edwards notoriously has been a very good respawn team, but continues to be plagued a bit by what is happening or not happening in their Search and Destroy. And even though we only saw 4 rounds there, McCormill, we started to see how the trends were switching. St. Edwards, good with their aggression. Arizona State then were able to essentially counter. No problem. They got that little forward position from Sprack a couple of different times, Gravity as well, and that turned into 2 rounds at least in a row for them on their way to a 6-4 win.
And then that surely does come down to the fact that Arizona State, again, the reason that they've been able to beat St. Edwards so many times is because they can see what they're doing, they find their patterns that St. Edwards are making on the map, and it almost becomes predictable at a certain point. You're able to counteract that, as you were saying beforehand, but more importantly, you have those adjustments that you make as a team. You go ahead, hit it right on the nail on the head, and boom, you're winning your maps almost flawlessly at a certain point. And sure, it might take a couple rounds here and there for you to figure that out, but once you do figure that out, you're pretty much smooth sailing for the rest of the way. And if St. Edwards don't really have the ability to adjust to the adjustments that the side of Arizona State's going to be able to make, well, then you're pretty much just lost in the water, stuck out to sea,
Sure.
and you're just going to be swimming with the fishes in a couple minutes, and there's not much you can do about it.
It's almost like you're trying to come out and speed run the search and try to get your opponent on the back foot so badly that they don't have the ability to kind of bounce back, but obviously that didn't happen. So I don't know. I would have loved to have seen how that map played out, because Arizona State has been looking pretty darn solid in their search and destroy throughout the tournament so far. But we turn our conversation into map number 3, again with no third map mode at the moment. We keep it on to hardpoint, and it's Bacage is what we're going to have for our venue for this second hard point overall. We continue to talk about the fact that not only is St. Edwards a solid respawn team, but both of these teams, when they've been locked up against one another so far, including the winners round 2 matchup where they played one another, all the hard points were separated by less than 60 seconds, so less than one full entire hard point.
Yep.
And that would hold the case through Gavudu. We'll see if we get the same instance here as we jump into the first hard point of Bacage.
They're going to open things up with the first blood. Now you're looking towards the first hard point. And really, all that's going to happen here is just going to be a couple of trades back and forth. SEU might get a couple of seconds here. ASU Maroon will probably go ahead and find themselves a bit of time too. So again, your first hard point is just going to be filling out your opponent for the time being, finding those spawns, finding exactly where you want to be on the map. Relk gets a great time in there with nade, gets the shots with the automaton at the exact same time, and now Relk's going to be being able to streak once again. And how many times have we seen this throughout the entirety of the day, where Relk just goes on these big streaks at the very beginning of the game, and that sets up St. Edwards for a little bit of a run deep into the first and maybe the second hard point as well, with full streaks to go along with it.
You have to know that Relk, after tossing that nade and then seeing that player run up the stairs, he's probably got to feel like the Greek god of COD timing. Your confidence is like, boy, I am reading these clowns right now. But after his death, he does come right back through to try to contest not just the old time on the first hill, but also through this barnyard as we open up our second hard point out into the fields. And Thresh will come around the back, trying to hold from inside the hill for only a small time. Was Gravity. He drops, so Thresh now takes his place, and St. Edwards will start to accrue time, of which, well, while I'm a marginal lead for now, as Arizona State continues to try to work around the back, but the last hope of that push would fall onto Sprack. Good help from afar, and how about it? The Sun Devils, they retake.
And this is one of the kind of situations we were kind of pinpointing beforehand where, if you are the team that's trying to break in towards the hard point, you're almost at a better advantage coming over from the right portion of the map, because the team that gets those close spawns is either going to spawn over towards that south portion or deep left. And some of those head glitches and power positions that you get when you spawn left aren't going to be as good when you're coming from the right down and towards the trenches, and you have those tanks to be able to work with. So Arizona State, they're able to come back here after that first kind of blunder on the middle map hard point. But P2, really at the same stance as P1, is still going to be a very scrap contest hill. So, I mean, the first 2 hills, relatively, you're going to be looking at about 45 to 30, and that's going to be pretty much your standstill throughout every single game, not just with these 2 teams.
I love this play from Fishity at the moment. Just kind of watching over the top to see if he can catch somebody coming off of spawn, but the problem is none of his teammates are finding kills, so he's got to do the work himself and nearly backs up into a second elimination, but cuts short. Streak ended with what I believe was full streaks earned, if not just maybe one short, able to catch the glide bomb and the strafing run at least. There's our answer. So as we start to see this break attempt growing a little bit of legs, now it's on to Relk to try to hold nice YY of the reload, but cannot hold it long enough to find Effectini, who responds with a double of his own. And with that, we continue this tug of war through the bottom of the house.
It's been nice, a back and forth contest between both of these teams here on Bokic. It's exactly what we thought we'd see, simply due to the fact that how crazy and contest heavy this map can be. Fishity at 15-6 already here so far has led the way from Arizona State throughout pretty much every single map in mode. He's just the slayer for the team, and he's going to be the backbone that's going to provide the spark for Arizona State time and time again. And once again, he's just continuing to prove that here in map number 3. And again, we said kind of map number 2 is almost a must-win for Arizona State, because you don't want to allow SEU Blue to go to a map number 3 with a 2-0 lead, especially beating you in Search and Destroy for the first time. And I don't know how many matches, but relatively speaking, you're looking at the side of Arizona State right now, who And again, in a certain situation, maybe it's a must-win here because you know how good St. Edwards can be in those clutch situations instead of a hard point. But, I mean, hell, even if you go to a map number 5, you fancy your chances.
And how about fancying your current position as well? Arizona State have barely given up an inch, let alone a second here on this barn hardpoint. But the problem is, with St. Edwards giving up their attempt to break, now they've got what the positions that they want around this river. Here comes the break attempt, though. A lot of it coming right down Main Street through the double doors. Fishy for first blood. Arizona State now working their way forward. Nade out from Kruk. It tags. He turns, tries to find the kill, not able to grab it. Gravity's right here. Turns this into one elimination, which could contest not just from the front, but it allows some freedom for players to move down through the house and around the back. It's going to be enough for the kills, plus, well, not actually the full spawn swap here. And with that team kill, St. Edwards can recover this.
And they can recover it, and sure, Relk might be able to pick up that top castle area, but I mean, you have the entirety of the left side of the map locked down, and all of a sudden now it's St. Edwards Hill to go ahead and run away with. They're in the driver's seat now, and sure, you have a little bit of a pinch coming through, you have a bit of congestion, but I mean, that just goes to show how even if you get a forward down, one costly team kill can come through and just screw your entire setup that you had on a hill, and you know, St. Edwards, they're going to be able to come back, maybe get to about a 20-point game here against the side of Arizona State. But, I mean, Bokic is time and time again considered to be one of the scrappiest hardpoint maps. And, well, it's just proving that once again here in map number 3.
You know, it's really funny that you mentioned that, and I'll just take that as a natural segue. We were kind of asking the question, you know, are there going to be any maps in this title that would kind of be like Garrison from last year, where you've got a lot of different hard points that will go to the game clock, and this map has provided that a couple of different times, mostly because this first hard point, no one can ever set foot on it. It feels like, mostly, again, this is the other thing, you know, we talked about it maybe a little bit more off camera, you know, the impact of not having trophy systems, and yeah, you talked about the Gammon bombs maybe not being there means that the trophies aren't as necessary, but the thing is, you cook up nades off spawn, you throw them right into a giant wide open hard point, it's hard to keep your feet on the ground. So I don't know, there's a lot of conversations to follow, but for now, with St. Edwards being able to get a couple of collected kills and turn it into some significant time, we're right back on into essentially a dead even game as we rotate over to P2.
Oh, Sprack gets a little bit feisty there. Gets the turn on into Kruk. Oh, the side of ASU Maroon to hold down middle map, but it's really not going to matter all that much. I think maybe a total of 10 to 15 seconds of time was accrued by both of the teams combined there on that point number 1. So now we're at point number 2 again, a very, very, very heavily contested hill, and it's just going to depend on who's going to be breaking, who's going to be holding from the spawn side. And sure, Arizona State might be holding from the spawn side right now, and you've got bottom barn control. That's probably the most important part of this hill, just holding down the side of the middle map barn. And if you're able to get inside of that, if you're the team that's trying to break on in, sure, it'll be great. But if you can hold it down from the spawn side, you're going to be golden, because that just cuts down 1 to 2, maybe even 3 extra lanes and angles that, yeah, you can be cut down from.
Nice.
That's just unfortunate there, because St. Edwards comes busting through the front door with Thresh funding 2, Rock funding 1, and everybody from the side of Arizona State flying across the map.
Yeah, I actually really like the way that St. Edwards just broke down that hard point. The glide bomb deals with the player trying to get outside the map. You know exactly where the other player is, kind of sitting in this back corner. So St. Edwards try to take the long route around. It does force the spawns to flip, but they can't turn it into as much success as I think you may have figured if you're kind of watching the status of the spawns. So now all of a sudden, you go to the new hard point, and Arizona State, with that string of kills, they're going to be able to try to contest this off the immediate attempt. Fishy up top is trying to watch the water wheel. His teammate's falling while inside, so he'll kind of escape to the underground, and even though he may not have found enough kills to actually influence the hard point, he has done well enough to flip the spawns around, and Arizona State can use this to try to re-hit this hill quickly.
And you never want to pinpoint necessarily a player who has been struggling throughout the entirety of the day, but it's just, I don't know, maybe if it's just kind of a mental block right now, or just how the team has been playing as a whole, but Kruk has just not been able to find a stride here today. And it's not just like throughout this series, it's been throughout the entirety of today. So, you know, maybe you get a couple of kills here in a string together. Maybe you just find one moment that you can go look back on and be fond of for yourself to maybe get a little bit of a jump start to that mental process, and you're right back in it. But those struggles, when they start happening, it's so hard to break that. And if you're able to do so, fantastic. If not, it can really hurt the team comp. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's all Kruk's fault, because it's clearly not. It's a team game at the end of the day. But the struggles have been noticeable throughout the entire day. And hopefully for his sake and the rest of the team, he's going to be able to go ahead and turn up a little bit towards the end of this tournament.
Well, he does win an important 1v1 in the middle of the map. That actually turns into an opportunity for the Hilltoppers to flip the spawns around right as we approach the halfway point here at the Barns. Relk cooks up. Hits it right off some hay bales. Oish. We'll figure out those hitbox detections later, don't worry. Eon's now from the opposite side, able to turn things up, but Thresh had already cooked up a nade, and that would be enough for a team kill. Not going to make too much of a difference, though, as St. Edwards continue to still find a way to break on in for the scrap 20. Arizona State are not giving this up, by the way. They're still hitting the topside fields, which is dangerous, to say the least. FXTD, sure you found a double, but the trade means that you're going to spawn all the way out and have to kind of hoof it over to the river. Tries to hold on to the spawns, but there is still enough time here for St. Edwards to clean up the kills around the old hill and make their way over. Won't fully flip the spawns as of yet, but St. Edwards have done a pretty solid job to at least initially give them the sides that they want.
Love the use of the glide bomb there. This hill specifically being so down low and having so many different angles that can be played from, especially up towards the top to try and break in on towards it. Getting information on your opponent, finding out where they're going to be trying to push from, and then obviously being able to hold down the hill at the exact same time is going to be so crucial. So sure, it doesn't really mount to all that much as St. Edwards also invests a couple of streaks into the hill as well, but you're basically going to handshake 30 seconds of time here between both of these two teams toward the end, especially if Arizona State does not opt to push here. But this is a big 20 seconds of time, Alan, because St. Edwards are getting desperately close to breaking that 200-point mark, and then, of course, both of these teams are still neck and neck down towards the end, and this is just another classic example of how close these two teams are to matching up against one another.
Yeah, and that was a hard point that made me feel like I was listening to an old school Outkast album, because it was like Bombs Over Baghdad for a moment, just glide bombs all over the place. The thing about it is, as we transition back to P1 in the courtyard, even though we find ourselves at a deadlock game, you find 15, 20 seconds here in the first hard point, you're going to be feeling really good about your chances to close this match out. We're neck and neck. Even with the 17 and 35 from Kruk, he's been able to accumulate nearly the most amount of time in the game. Well, I really didn't say nearly, because FXTD has got 2.5 minutes worth of time inside the hard point, and this has been a clean result of kills. 3 for 2 the exchange in Arizona State. They are soaking up that 20 seconds or so that I was talking about. Dangerous moment here for St. Edwards. They need a break, and they find it right when asked.
Well, now Arizona State no longer can win off this hard point, so rotations are going to be crucial here. But for the side of St. Edwards, this is one of those maps to where, okay, maybe you lose this here, that's okay. You go to a map 4. You won the last map 4 in this first series against Arizona State to force that map number 5. But you want to be able to win these 2 respawns, so you don't have to go to that 5th and final map for the search and destroy. Now with Arizona State being at the 229 mark, you're still down by about a good 15 points to the side of ASU. So now you got to push back over towards the site with the north portion of the map being held down. All they need is just 18 more seconds.
Yeah, Sprack is going mental inside the middle of this barnyard, and a huge tactical retreat from FXTD, getting into the back houses to make sure the spawns stay locked. There's the spawn out. One more attempt for St. Edwards, but nobody can get through Sprack. 5 in a row for him. How about number 6? Gravity takes care of it. 5 seconds remain, and Sprack is starting to streak. There's number 7. No need for him to collect the 8th. Arizona State on the backside of some scrappy plays from Sprack get them the map 3 win, and they take the edge of the series 2 maps to 1.
A one-man army. We talked how good Fishy he had been throughout the entirety of the series. How about Sprack just goes ahead and close the door on the hopes and dreams that St. Edwards has to be able to come back inside of that hard point, and that is a huge turning point in this series. I know I said beforehand how St. Edwards were able to clutch up in map number 4 throughout that last series, but again, it was another closely contested map, and this just goes to show how flip-floppy these hard points can be between both of these two teams. ASU Maroon, they're in the driver's seat now. They can easily go ahead and win this next hardpoint map. They can force themselves back into the grand finals to face off against Ottawa. And sure, they'd have to win 2 best-of-3s, which I don't think anybody foresees them being able to do. It's still entirely possible, especially coming off the back end of a potential win against what we could probably consider a rival team, since you've played them so many times already throughout the entirety of this tournament.
And I can appreciate the visual, the air quotes involved with that. Cue in Dr. Evil reference here. But here's the thing. You know, we talked about the trend of Gavudu from map number 1. If you were to kind of compare and contrast both the hard points we've had so far. Arizona State started off great with Gavudu. 45 to 15 exchanges on hard points. We'll say 40-20s. Some of the time was contested or went neutral, but largely the majority of time was just barely in the corner in favor of Arizona State. Now you go over to Bacage. And at a certain point in time, it was almost the opposite situation, at least for, the second rotation of hard points. But one of the moments that was big for me was, I called it, all of the bombs that were being dropped in on the river when St. Edwards I don't feel needed to use as much as they did, especially knowing that you're going into a wide open hard point for the first hill on Courtyard, and then again back towards the tank fields. Glide bombs could be everything. I think the efficiency and the effectiveness of being able to turn streaks into actual score was just a bit missed there for St. Edwards, not only because of maybe the overinvestment we had from the fourth hard point on River, but even in the second rotation, when I was crediting the fact that, hey, they dropped the glide bomb towards the outer side of fields, everyone else goes around the back, you try to flip the spawns, they didn't hold that hard point. So those are two big moments for me that may have just barely missed the mark for the Hilltoppers in map 3.
Yeah, and I don't want to use the term nervous, but I will use the term apprehension from the side of St. Edwards, and more of a sense of panic at the same time towards the end of that hill, simply due to the fact that when you do invest both of those glide bombs that you had in your back pocket onto one hill, that, again, we mentioned was very, very scrap heavy throughout the entirety of it, throughout the first and second rotation that we saw that hill. It's one of those moments in the game where, sure, you might see your opponent getting to that 200-point mark, and you want to do something about it, and yeah, they got a big 15, maybe 20 seconds of time on the tail end of that to get the game tied up at about 200 going to that first set of rotations. But again, at a certain point, you do want to be able to use those utility in a specific way to be able to break onto that hill, but you have to trust yourself and trust your gun skill at the same time, too, to be able to break in towards that hill while also saving something for a little bit later on, because one glide bomb is all it takes. We saw that with the team kill that came out from Arizona State, how much that would cost them earlier on when Fishy took out a teammate, and then they completely lost a hard point due to that fact, even though they had it completely cleared out. It could have been the exact same factor there. You get one kill, then it's a 4 versus 3, you immediately collapse onto the site because you have the close spawns there. You have the power positions being up high on the map as well, and that easily could have led you to being able to get that 25 seconds of time. But again, that can be nitpicky here nor there too, to say at the same time. So you never know how it's going to play out either way. It could have been the same result either way if you would have saved even both of those streaks for a little bit later on. But either way, now we're going to be talking about Arizona State leading this with a 2-1 lead going to a map number 4 where they can close this out on a map that they're at least somewhat keen to going on to Berlin. And this is going to play at least somewhat similar to Gavutu in the fact that there's a lot of very closely contested hardpoints around the middle of the map, and having that mid-map control is going to be so big.
And then on the opposite side, just to kind of throw the other edge of the sword here, not only do you have extremely scrappy hard points in the middle of the map, you also have some very well and hard secured hard points on the outsides of the map. So things like being able to lock down spawns can be extremely important on rotations. I'm looking at you, Train Yard. It's the one that always gets me, I'll tell you what. So Berlin next on queue. And look, here's the thing. And I think we can kind of maybe turn the conversation you're coming off of with the streak usage into an immediate implication going into map number 4. It's one of those situations with how scrappy this game is, and I guess we should probably use a different word, how high valued and how highly aggressive engagements come through in this game, and how regularly you see players go on streaks. You kind of have to know when the in case of emergency break glass moment is, because that was, I think, again, we weren't even at 200 for either of the two teams, and it was like we already busted out the fire extinguisher and the fireman's axe to try to deal with a fire that wasn't even really there. So I think that's going to be an interesting conversation for teams as well when they kind of learn the pacing of the game. That's kind of what I'm looking at, and why I kind of wanted to go back to that, because the pacing on Berlin is not going to feel like the pacing from Bocage, especially because of the fact that we've got those two hard points that are kind of cornered up against the back of the map. It's going to feel a lot more like Gavutu, and to that point, and to kind of wrap this all up in a nice little pretty bow, St. Edwards were better at hard points like that on Gavutu than ASU were. So that's kind of where my thought process is.
I think you used that analogy perfectly to kind of describe just the entirety of how this game is going to feel, at least for the first couple of weeks and potentially even months, as we still kind of figure out how the hard points are going to play. And then once we eventually get that third game mode as well, how players are going to be able to react to that. And I think it's going to be telling of who the good teams are, who the teams that need a little bit more work are. But we already see point number 1, the St. Edwards University roster. We'll get in towards the point first. First blood going to be on the clock, or at least I thought it was for the side of St. Edwards, but it is going to be Gravity and Sprack who go ahead and find 2 to kick things off. 2 seconds now in growing. I mean, it's just another one of those early game breakoffs where you're just trying to get as many points as humanly possible before the next rotation.
The thing is, this is the one map of all of the current ones in our competitive pool set where you can do a lot of damage on the game clock through this first hard point. It's almost like the 5th hard point should be the first hard point. Kruk, hello? Okay, nice little double right there, just stealing me away from my narrative. That's fine, brother. And how about it? You know, the thing about what Kruk just did was not the fact that he found himself a clean double, but with him holding his life when Arizona State was losing, or pardon me, when Arizona State was killing off St. Edward's members, it allowed a chance for him to kind of pinch behind and also win the rotation over to the back side of the mailroom.
And this is what we wanted to see out of Kruk in the first place. We knew he had the ability to be able to pop off, but now make it 6 in a row. You're 1, maybe 2 kills off of being able to have full streaks here with a bombing run to go in the back pocket. Now you're going to jump down onto the point. You're going to spot one out in the corner. You're going to be able to make it 7 in a row. You call upon Kruk to do good things, so he'll deliver with flying colors. And now with 7 in a row and 30 seconds left in point number 2, you've got streaks to work with if you are the side of St. Edwards. And Arizona State needs to be careful because Kruk is on a mission here to prove myself wrong when I was talking about him negatively.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of very avid fans out there probably asking the question, so who's got host this map? Because Kruk is going in a complete bipolar mode. Right now, there's number 8. All right there, sir. Just go ahead and shut us all up real fast. We'll just enjoy the show. But that all said, look at the heavy investment coming through for St. Edwards to try to hold on to full time. They will commit to trying to get a streak in, and while it was targeting 1, it was Relk to find the kill before the glide bomb connected. So now number 5 of Thresh working the bottom side of the map. Number 7 in Kruk with the 8 spree is still on his way working the opposite side. It comes down to this gunfight right here, and if he wins that, I don't know what words I could have said to do much. Thresh is also having a little bit of a difficult time finding words to explain how strong and sturdy that wood planking was between the window, but as he forces himself to the pistol, Fectini and the Arizona State Maroon Sun Devils will find a way to win out the trades and get themselves some significant time.
One more gunfight down. Kruk once again looking to start streaking. Fectini will be the one down the hallway, but Fishity from behind will be able to take out that streaking player from St. Edwards. Now as Fishity will go ahead and find 3 in a row, now making it 5 in total. We'll have the glide bomb to work with. Couple more players now going to be pushing up the map, and this is again just good time for the Sun Devils to go ahead and be able to bring this back a little bit further into the game. You still have the rotation here over towards the train area, and well, you know, Shift, this is kind of the one that you have a bit of a problem with, and I can absolutely see why. It's such a deep spawn that you can have so many angles to watch this from, and well, it's just going to be scrappy in its nature, but at the same time you can really turn it into a money hill, and if those streaks come into use, this is one of the best parts of the map to use.
Yeah, and I will say, just looking back at the initial setup for St. Edwards, a huge mistake. A lot of the value of the defenders were towards the front side of the hill and the kind of bottom middle of the minimap, and it allowed Sprack to just walk through the backside of the train station, find a free kill, and that flipped the spawns around. Now, I will say, as far as losing spawns, St. Edwards is doing a really nice job of just making sure the hardpoint stays neutral, but how long can you hold that status quo? And the answer seems to be for not much longer, as Arizona State continued to reinforce, and eventually the trades should allow them a chance to get on for the back 13 seconds. But considering the loss of the spawns, only giving away 13-15 seconds, that's not bad at all for the side of St. Edwards.
Nope. You invest a streak there as well, so a technical damage control while being able to at least, again, keep yourselves inside of the lead. Now it's back to the middle of the map, and, you know, this is kind of where I tend to agree with you a bit there, where, you know, that first hardpoint that we have seems to be more of a P5 than a P1, and this seems to be more of a P1 than a P5, so, I mean, you simply just switch the two around, and sure, maybe it works out a little bit better, but who knows? It still could be an issue where you spawn in on the map, how close you're going to be to that actual hardpoint, and, you know, where you go from there, but again, it's just little things here and there inside of the game that could just be changed potentially down the road to make things even better. But hell, I've enjoyed my competitive time so far here in Vanguard, and I've enjoyed the show that the side of Arizona State and St. Edwards have been putting on, because in back-to-back series between both of these two teams, they have showed up, and we have another opportunity to see ourselves in a map number 5 in a best of 5 between two of the top dogs inside of the CCL.
Yeah, and let's be candid here. A lot of the 100 points that we've had so far was off of the near 9 streak that Kruk went on. He's now 12-7, so things have considerably slowed down, which, you know, you can talk about that being the cost balance between why St. Edwards had a hot start versus why Arizona State is currently digging into this deficit and have a chance here at office to maybe even take their first lead. Kruk, though, same position he was last time, looking to make a long flank around the back. Stuns come through, he gets figured out, no problem, and the Sun Devils once again will show their resiliency as they bend but do not break. Still an opportunity here for St. Edwards to try to test this one more time, and they will take that opportunity, but Fectini, in effect, has just shut that down single-handedly as he's on 3.
30 seconds left. Contest once again going to come to the front door. Sprack will be there to shut down any hopes that they have, at least for the initial push. But Thresh and Relk trying to go ahead and bring up the rear is going to be big. Gravity almost goes ahead, turns onto Relk, but Relk will be there. No congestion yet for the final 15 seconds of time. They're still looking to maybe potentially push through the front door, but they're just going to go ahead, kind of decide to give this one up, count their losses, and now rotate back on over towards point number 2, where you see the side of Arizona State being able to light up the kill feed in yellow. This was Crux Domain and Playground last time. This time, though, it's just completely flipped the other way. At least it seemed at the very beginning. Now it's going to be up to Gravity to go ahead and break into the mill.
Yeah, this is I would say, well, must-need hardpoint here for St. Edwards, because the last rotation of hardpoints has been about 100 points to 15 in favor of Arizona State, and Gravity, my goodness, Sprack picking up where he had left off, but St. Edwards still with the quick reinforcements will recover from a dire situation, and for the time being, it looks like the iron is casting hot, and the wound is close to being cauterized as St. Edwards find themselves with 20 seconds to fight for, and they're in a good position to maybe lock down the majority of this time here on 3.
And, you know, it seems so simple to see those 3 pieces pop up in the kill feed, but those are the things that I miss from the actual Modern Warfare engine and the faster TTKs of Call of Duty. Say what you will about fast or long TTKs, whatever your preference and opinion may be on them. The faster TTKs allow for so much fun inside of these matches. I mean, you think back to yesterday where Fame had the 1 versus 4, and the fast TTK sure might have helped a little bit, and sure, it was a great play by Fame in the end of things. It still kind of allowed a segue into that play being made. And again, these big 3 pieces where you can be, at 100 HP and then be able to put, 8 to 9 bullets into 3 different people, and boom, they're all dead, and you've got yourself a highlight play for the year that you can put on the reel.
Sure.
So it's just a great thing to see, and it's one of those things that we're going to be able to see all year long, and it's just makes me happy, makes me smile.
Man, this has been total domination over the last 5 hard points for Arizona State. 180, 142 the tally. Desperate for a break. SEU trying to make their way in. Nice read from Sprack, but he cannot tally up a second nor the needed third. So Fishity on 3 straight. He'll be tested next and cannot get the better of Kruk, who is starting to get into takeover mode once again. 3 kills in a row for the young man. Getting close to a minute full of hill time as well. But the big question now is, how do you rotate across the map? But look, once again, Arizona State heavily investing towards the south side of the minimap. They now have to quickly turn and see if they can respond to the hit from the hilltoppers coming from the top.
Big utility there. Takes out a teammate, but also takes out an opponent in the process. So it'll be a 3 versus 3 over towards the point. You see the contain and corral from the side of St. Edwards starting to come through. Again, they're just trying to play damage control as Arizona State has those back spawns. But now as player number 7 starting to push through the back, that's going to be a distraction that's going to allow player number 5 and Thresh to start making his way up the map. But as I say that, Gravity just flips on him, and that's going to be a straight down plunge into the grave that the side of Arizona State are going to put on the side of St. Edwards. And now, once again, you're just trying to mitigate everything you can if you're St. Edwards, because now Arizona State's only 40 points away from not only a victory in map number 4, but from getting to the grand finals to face against Ottawa once again in a best-of-5 series, potentially back-to-back.
And it's another moment, McCormick, where St. Edwards do everything they're supposed to do for the first step of breaking up spawns. But the second, the third, the fourth thing that has to go right after that are completely amiss. Arizona State retake that hard point way too easily. So now it's time for the rubber to meet the road. If you're St. Edwards, someone's going to have to step up and just dominate through this, kind of hold through this scrappy, broken hard point right in the middle of the map. If you can find time here, you will have a chance to get yourself back into the game. But the problem is it's a 4-for-1 trade, and the Sun Devils will start to accrue more time. St. Edwards spawning all the way out, have to make their way across Gravity, who's already posted up in a window. The rest of his teammates watching around, and there is still enough time for Arizona State to win the map here. Nice shots, though, from Thresh. Maybe gives them a look to challenge, but even the thing about it is you can't just challenge here. You've got to win this hard point and rotate to the next. That's a lot to ask.
You gotta fly. 12 seconds left. The break-in now. Relk, Thresh are there, but a costly double team kill from St. Edwards once again is going to be big. It almost cost them in map number 1 on Gavutu. Here it's going to cost them a bit more, but as Fishity finds yet another kill, it's 34-20 with 11 seconds needed. We'll rotate over towards the next hard point where St. Edwards is set up. But you talk about players who are consistent through the entirety of their days. Well, look no further than Fishity. 34-20, leading the way for the team and being the rock and centerpiece of this Arizona State roster.
And with that, Relk watching the cross, gets the read on the players, but can't win any gunfights. SEU blue spawn all the way out in Narnia. Here come the final couple of seconds. Last touch for Relk, only going to be good for a mere minimal consideration. Arizona State, my goodness, their ability to re-break hardpoints after they lose spawns and the hill have been unbelievable in this series. And that would be one of the first convincing wins that we've seen between these two schools that had been gridlocked up until this point. And I thought for a second I was about to punch holes in my walls if Gravity would have found another kill after that. Unbelievable stuff from Arizona State.
Oh, I mean, you go back to that first series, right? And you kind of take map number 4 in a sense and say, okay, St. Edwards was able to make that into a map number 5. Arizona State closes it out, sure. You give Arizona State a second chance to close out their opponents, but this time to completely, just kind of cut them off and finally kill them. And they went for the head this time. They're able to go ahead and make the play. They're able to go ahead and close out the best-of-5 series. And now, Shift, we have our grand final set between two teams. That was a $700 match of Call of Duty right there in that best-of-5 that Arizona State comes out on top of. And now we'll go ahead and take a look back at our best-of-5 series, see where things started to where they ended. And in map number 1, again, we saw it was a 250 to 218 win for the side of St. Edwards. But after that, Shift, you just see it's all red there. It's all the Sun Devils. And now they're going to be facing off against Ottawa in the grand finals in what will now be a $1,500 match of Call of Duty.
And I'll say this, to recap over this series, the 3 maps in the middle, that was, I would say, best wrapped up by saying St. Edwards just missed opportunities. And
Sure.
That's going to be, I think, a phrase we'll use a lot in these early tournaments, simply due to the fact that everyone's learning. And, those missed opportunities are where the learning happens. You talked about a couple of different times in Bocage as well as on Berlin there in the last 2 maps. You did everything you could have possibly wanted. It was a clean play to get around the back of a hard point, flip the spawns, but then you don't actually win the hard point with those spawns. Like little things that are kind of becoming the monkey wrench in the system for St. Edwards, that Arizona State is like, all right, I'm just going to go 1v2 here, I guess, and then all of a sudden my teammates are here to go 4v2 the rest of the way. They just re-flip everything so darn quickly. So I think there's a little bit of learning as far as who's hitting what and when for St. Edwards. In those moments in particular, once you've already completed the first step, that you polish those up and you're going to be right back into your winning ways. But for the fact of the matter of Arizona State having that under lock and being able to come back in when they're tested on rebreaks and look good during it is very encouraging, I think, if you find yourself residing in Tempe. But the problem is, the question that has been plaguing everybody for the better part of the last 390 days is, who the hell's going to beat Ottawa? We'll find out. We'll send things to a break and see if Arizona State can find a way to take down the Braves. We'll see how things unfold when we come back after this break.